So the first topic is housing affordability. I'll throw it over to Dan.
Yeah, as kind of a quick preamble to our discussion here, we'd like to just get a quick yes or no question on this. Vancouver's recently passed rezoning for most of the city's lower density residential areas to allow for duplexes in the vast majority of these single family areas. Can we get a quick yes or no on whether or not you support it? We'll just go through the same order that we did the beginning. So Hector?
Yes.
Ken?
No to the process.
Kennedy?
Yes.
No,
Wai.
and we will rescind it.
Great, thank you. And then to move into our discussion, we'll start with a question for Hector Bremner, and Hector, you'll have 90 seconds to respond.
Okay.
And then each of the other candidates will have a minute each, and then we'll open it up to a bit of an exchange. So Hector, your platform is promising, as you've indicated in your initial opening remarks there, it's largely focused on housing. It is targeting 12,000 new units, housing units per year in the first year, and then increasing that target to 20,000 homes per year after that?
Right.
Is that right? To be clear, how many years are you talking about that 20,000 target? Would that be, is that a set number of years or?
It's not a set number of years. What we need to do is build housing towards the actual need and demand. We've been shorting the market for about 30 years.
Okay, so we're not sure about how long we'd be at that 20.
Well, what we're suggesting is that we need to constantly reassess, and we need a real citywide plan. And I think that the thing is that housing is and need is not static. So there may be a time where housing demand will drop off. But at the moment, we have not been building the middle class housing. The demand has been large, and we have not modified our process to get it done.
Okay, well, so on that note, so looking at a target of 20,000 per year for at least the second year of your mandate, we just want to hear more about what kind of calculations have you and your team done to determine that that will be enough to meet demand?
Right.
And also on the other side, that it will be possible
Right.
to create that many units per year, which is significantly higher than our current output levels.
Yeah, so we're talking about getting these units approved and getting them in the hopper and getting them through the process. We obviously didn't pull the number out of thin air. It's based on regional statistics, and the capacity is within the current market. You have to keep in mind that we would be building the housing that I'm suggesting if we weren't waiting 5 years to get it approved. So we have a backlog. What we're talking about is freeing up the backlog and getting things, shovels in the ground, which have been ready to go in the ground the entire time. We have a lot of construction crews that would like to be working in Vancouver. They're not able to work in Vancouver. But to bring this to not too fine a point here is this is not a zero-sum game. When you look at Seattle, Portland, several other jurisdictions, New South Wales and Australia, they have had very, very similar political conversations around housing and actual real market pressures around housing as we have, virtually identical. But they've taken action, and you're seeing market corrections in key middle-class housing areas, particularly rental, and that's what we're focusing on. So keep in mind that these figures that we're talking about are focused in a bandwidth that is more attainable. It's also heavily predicated on our 3-year market correction program for rental, and we believe that this is feasible. We've gone out to industry experts, academics, and professionals, and they feel that this is attainable, and they actually can't understand why we're not doing it now, and they feel that the warnings, the gongs, the bells, the alarms have been going off for years, and they've wondered why we have just sat on our hands.
Excellent, thank you. And next, you have 1 minute to respond, starting with Ken Sim. Ken?
Okay, great. Yeah, that plan is aspirational, and I think we would all love to have that plan in place. I think there are 3 challenges with it. One, Hector's absolutely right. The permitting process is backwards, and it's taking way too long. So, everyone talks about how we can improve the permitting process. I'm an expert in workflow, and I'm the only person here who can actually understand how to improve that workflow. The second thing is, and this isn't my analysis of it, it's Andy Yan out at SFU when he was commenting about Kennedy's plan of building 85,000 units, which is 8,500 a year. He said not possible because we actually do not have the capacity to build in the city. So to hope that we build 12,000 units, that's not going to happen as well. We just do not have the people to build these places, and so that's at longer term. Absolutely, we can, we would like to address it as well, and that's one of the reasons why we like our short-term plan of 2 secondary suites. It brings immediate relief to the city while we figure out the long-term solution.
Great, thank you. And Kennedy?
Yeah, well, what I like about Hector's plan is he's got some numbers in there. He's put a vision forward of how he sees the city developing, which is basically building one coal harbor every 6 months, which is, you know, a startling thing that you might see in China, but be very difficult to do here. What we don't see from the other candidates is an actual plan that we can kick around, although Ken seems to think that Hector's vision, he's adopted that today anyway. I have a very clear vision that I've worked on all summer with a whole bunch of experts. Of course, all my academic training is in this area, as well as I have been a housing policy consultant for years, so I get this. And it's based off the current city plan. So that currently the city has proposed and is moving towards building 72,000 units over the next 10 years. My plan is to build 85,000, but I would have a much more emphasis on affordable rental housing run by nonprofits, and that is basically built on city lands or provincial lands or federal lands if we can get them. They're run by nonprofits, and that way you can have a lot lower rents. So this is not SROs in the downtown east side. These are rental housing for the workforce here. For folks that are working in the city, they should be able to live here. We need this for their sakes, but also for business. And I think this is a plan that will work because it works everywhere else. It works in all kinds of European cities, and we can do it here.
Thank you. And Wai?
Well, I'm kind of shocked to hear Kennedy admit that he was working on a Vancouver plan while he was on the federal payroll. But anyway, we do have a housing plan, and I'm happy to share it with you. And our housing plan is unique in that it's very realistic, as opposed to what these gentlemen have been talking about. We all know that Vancouver does not have a supply issue, which is why the Making Room motion that has been passed in such a big hurry by Hector and his cronies at City Hall, selling out the city once again to his developer friends. That is the issue here in the city, is that we do not have a supply issue because any millionaire wandering around the city can afford to buy a home and can afford to buy another luxury condo. The issue here is affordability. This is why our plan is called Real Affordable Housing, because we want to focus on affordability. Our plan is comprehensive, it's unique. We will not sell any city land, and we will do purpose-built rentals around transportation hubs for rentals and for easy entry for millennials.
So how many units will you build, though? You didn't answer the question. They all gave a specific number. How many units a
Well,
year
we
do you
know
foresee
that
building?
the Vancouver's population is growing at 1% per year. So these figures are completely outrageous because that's not the growth of Vancouver. And this is consistent over a 15-year spread. So at 1% a year, we're looking at 5,600 people that are coming into Vancouver, of which many are couples or families. So we're looking at a need for about 2,500 units per year, which we think is completely doable.
That's actually smaller than the 20-year average of the last 20 years in terms of...
That's because for the last 15 years, we have been building at a 1.19% increase. So every tear down or every new home that has been replaced, we have been actually building in this region at just under 1.2. So there's a housing stock there. We've already said that there's 40,000 units that are coming on stream. They're being built right now as we speak. And so that is the issue, is that there is enough supply. There's not enough affordable supply for the people that need it, for the young families, for the millennials, for the young workers. So our policy actually is building on the fact that we are going to be launching what's called a Millennial Plus program. And the Millennial Plus program is unique in that what we're going to be doing is we're going to be working with 3P partnerships and leveraging my experience in government, which is substantive, and we're going to leverage that so that we can build smaller units for people who want to get into the entry market at around $300,000, so that their cost of mortgage for getting into the housing market is going to be around $1,500 a month.
Okay, let's open it up here to others. Who else wants to speak?
Just
Go ahead.
point out
Yeah.
a couple things.
Yeah.
Really good discussion. I mean, I think there's some threads, and some people understand that we're building the wrong types of supply, and there's some quibbles about the numbers. With people are quoting some things though that I think are not correct. And as a Vancouver City Councillor, and when you're saying that like we're doing enough or we're doing this and we're doing that, I mean it's not real. I mean my plan is based on conversations with staff. My conversations are based on industry experts and academics who I think are a little bit better qualified. But let's be really clear, we're quoting a study here when we're talking about population growth that was largely debunked. I think I know what you're referring to. And this study was widely debunked because, for example, at home I have 2 kids. I have Carlo and Gianluca, are 21 and 20. They are at home, they were born in Vancouver, they cannot move out. Population doesn't increase, but the demand load just increased by 2 units. So you are not creating space for people to have their own units once they age out of their parents' home or whatever. So there is no flexibility. We have an effective 0 vacancy rate in the city of Vancouver on rental. So it's not up for debate as to whether or not we need to build more units of it. 2,400 units would never get you there. And I don't think quite we're talking about building a coal harbor every 6 months. I think what we're really taking a practical approach and saying, our housing plan, the actual action plan, this action plan is based on empirical evidence and is directly taking action on the fact that we have been shorting the market up until this point, and that we have to not only catch up with the demand that we have been not meeting for several decades, but we also need to look forward and build a city, come together and park the politics and recognize that 100 years from now, what is Vancouver going to look like? What is 10 years going to look like? Because right now, with $5 million on the west side of Vancouver and $3 million on the east side, where do you go from here? So change has got to happen, and we've got to think a little bit bigger.
Yeah, well, I mean, my plan's clear. It's based on what the city, you know, the experts at the city, the industry has all come together and have a plan over 10 years of 72,000 units. And I've just said that I would add more, affordable housing run by nonprofits, which is very common around the world. Hector has a much larger number, Wai has a much smaller number, and Ken has no number because he hasn't presented a plan. One day he's freezing building, the next day he's agreeing with Hector that we should build 70,000 units over 3 years, and there's really no
Actually
plan,
did
and
not
his
say that.
experience is kind of showing here. His
Go ahead.
experience is showing.
Go ahead, Ken.
Okay, well, let's talk about this. First of all, I have different experience. I'm a chartered accountant, former forensic accountant, and I've run a large, complex organization, and that's what the city of Vancouver
But you'd
is.
have targets at
Can I
that
please
organization.
finish, if that's okay?
Well, I just want to know what your target
Yeah,
is,
I'm
because
gonna
you want to
answer
be
that.
mayor, so you
I'm
should
gonna
tell
answer-
people.
And that's the challenge we have with politics right now. We can't have a nice, lively conversation because we have heckling. So if you'd like me to answer the question, I will.
Sure, go ahead.
And so the challenge we have with everyone's plans here, while they're aspirational, it actually doesn't, it's not hitting reality in the sense that people are suffering right now. I grew up as an immigrant family, and I went to 5 elementary schools in 7 years because we struggled with a rental accommodation. So when we talked about these plans of building 85,000 units or 12,000 units a year, that is not going to solve our challenges today, tomorrow,
They need to
next
know what
week.
your
Hold
plan
on,
is. What is your plan?
I'm answering the question. See, we're going back to this. So I'm suggesting we provide immediate relief right now by opening up all the houses in Vancouver and giving them the potential to have 2 secondary suites. And not everyone's going to want to live in a secondary suite, but guess what? It actually puts downward pressure on rental rates.
And how many new
Hold
suites
on,
would that
can I
give?
finish, please?
How many would that bring
and
on
so
the
it
market?
puts down, puts pressure on rental rates on townhomes and condos, and it starts to address the issue. Medium and longer term, we clean up the permitting process and we build purpose-based rental on
How many?
city-owned land. It's hard to say right now because we don't know where we're going to be. And I'm not going to be, like, I'm not playing politics, and I'm not going to throw a number out there for the sake of throwing a number out there that's not realistic. Your number of 85,000 units, it's not my comment, it's Andy Yan's comment, who's a professor at SFU, which is one of the academics that you cite, says your plan's not going to happen. So you can make up a number.
What's your
It's not
number,
gonna-
though? What's your number? People need to know,
Yeah.
if you're going to leave
We're
the
gonna-
city.
we are going
you
to build as quickly as possible,
What's
as
the
much
number?
as possible.
85,000 is wrong for you, it's right for me, it's right for experts. What's your
You
number?
might as well say 300,000 because
So
it's
your
not going
number's
to happen.
300,000?
No, I'm not. I'm saying
What's
your
your
number.
number?
You might as well have a
What's your
300.
number?
Why don't you say 500,000,
No,
Kennedy?
it's
Because
spelled
your 8,500 is not going to happen, and you are selling The residents of Vancouver,
number
a bill
and
of
no
goods.
plan.
Gentlemen, can I, just one sentence of just perspective, is that, you know, I hear the secondary suite argument. The secondary suites are generally allowed today, maybe not 2 of them in all cases, but I want you to consider that I've heard this number of 40,000 new secondary suites, but what your plan is talking about is 40,000 new permits. With purpose-built rental, we need 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 permits. Right? So purpose-built rental is the solution. Basement suites is not an aspiration for future generations, and they don't need to live under somebody else's house and pay off their mortgage. They need a front door, and they deserve the respect of having their own purpose-built housing. Not artisanal landlords, but
I think it's an issue of
professional-run housing they can
ensuring that
count
we
on.
build a diversity of housing, and that is what's been lacking in the last 15 years in the city as the Vision Vancouver and the MPA continue to sell us out to their developer friends, and that is exactly what's been happening. Let's not make any mistake about that. The issue here is the diversity of housing that is not happening, as I said, the affordable housing. So we completely agree with having a secondary suite and having a laneway housing. But the issue here again is it has to be neighborhood first. We have to work in collaboration with neighborhoods so that they can have a say in the planning. So in our plan, what we're going to be doing is putting neighborhoods first, where we work in collaboration with them. They have a say in the gentle densification that happens within their housing plan, and that we work with them to ensure that the plan happens with the appropriate spaces within their heritage sites and all of that sort of thing.